up, everyone? This is Juju Talk Sports. That's Jose Corral. This is 49 Reasons to Listen. Go ahead and hit that subscribe button as we are providing you weekly Niners content. On today's episode, we got a little bit of a disagreement between us. You know, we generally, for the most part, two great minds of the same mind here. But when it comes to the tight end position or a potential tight end position, we got a little bit of a disagreement here. Now, David Njoku, the tight end out of the Cleveland Browns, he was actually drafted in George Kittle's same draft class. He requested a trade. And it makes sense why he requested a trade. I mean, they just signed Austin Hooper to a big deal this offseason. So he's kind of playing second fiddle at his own position. Not to mention, got Odell, got a lot of weapons over there in Cleveland. So he wants out. I say, Niners should give him a look. Jose says,
I say they should not. I say they should pass on trying to get him, trying to send some assets out to Cleveland to get David Njoku. You kind of mentioned it, playing second fiddle to Austin Hooper. He would be doing the same exact thing out in San Francisco. You mentioned Austin Hooper actually has the before George Kittle probably gets his deal done. Austin Hooper has the best tight end contract in the NFL. So then you would be sending him to a guy. The center, he'll be behind a guy, that's going to break that, who actually is going to have now the biggest tight end contract in the league. So I think he's just going to go back to the same situation. I think he's wanting to leave Cleveland just because he maybe wants to be, tight end one somewhere at some team. And let's be honest here, he's definitely not going to be the number one option at tight end in San Francisco.
But don't you think, Jose, that he just wants to leave Cleveland because it's Cleveland? I mean, come on. Let's be real. Joakim Noah put it in awards better than anyone else. Do you want to go to Cleveland? Right now, I got a charter flight anywhere in the U.S. Cleveland, is that going to be on your number one destination? No. You know what's probably going to be in your top five? That little city out there by the bay, San Francisco. Maybe he'll leave your heart out there. The old Sinatra song. Come on. David Njoku in San Francisco with Kyle Shanahan. It just works. It just makes sense because why I've kind of put this pieces together and why I kind of like it is, come on, how much can Cleveland really ask for in assets? When you consider his production, it doesn't line up with his ability. It doesn't line up with his athleticism. Right. So he only started one game last year. He only played in 4. He was dealing with concussion issues. I believe he had either I want to say a hand issue or something last year.
It was his wrist.
Yeah, that was keeping an eye on games. But I assume he's all healed up and good to go from that. He's a physical specimen, and it's no, mystery why he would have got drafted ahead of Kittle back in their draft class.
Right.
He was a first-round pick. He made more sense. He put up more numbers out there in Miami. Kittle, when he coming out of Iowa, I believe he had 30 catches his senior year. So it was ugly. It's hard to evaluate a player when you don't actually get to see the ball in their hands. But
right.
I think with Debo's injury, we keep looking for that next wide receiver to step up. I think that Kyle Shanahan could really get creative with some 2 tight end sets. It adds to the running game. Throw in a Kyle Juszczyk there, and it's holes for days for Raheem Mostert and company. That's the way I kind of look at it, why I think that he makes sense. He makes a fit, and I don't think we necessarily have to worry about paying him. I think he just wants to be in a better situation.
No, yeah, you actually bring up a good point. It kind of just depends on him. Is it really him just wanting to leave Cleveland? Because if it's him just wanting to leave Cleveland, then he probably would settle for being in a situation where he would be the second guy. But like you mentioned, in that offense with Kyle Shanahan, he's going to get so many opportunities if he did play with the Niners. He's going to get so many opportunities that maybe in Cleveland he didn't have with Freddie Kitchens. And so maybe you're right. Maybe he can fit well. But for me, I think it's more than just him wanting to leave Cleveland. Yes, it's Cleveland. Yes, it's the Browns organization. Yes, it's the same organization that's had 3 different head coaches in the past 4 years. But they're still got some talent. I mean, that team they're still really talented, especially on the offensive side of the ball. They finally fixed some of the offensive line issues. So I don't think it's that much of a dumpster fire as it has been the past couple of years. Sure, we've been saying that the past couple of years as well, that they're not as much of a dumpster fire as they have been the previous years. But I don't think that situation is necessarily as bad as we think it is. So I think it's him wanting to prove that he's more than just a second guy. He's more than just a second option at tight end. And I think for me, he's just looking to be that number one guy, that number one receiver. You mentioned a first round guy. It has to be, playing on his mind, being like, okay, why would they bring in Austin Hooper, who's a little bit older in age? He's been in the league for a little bit. And when I've just been in the league, the past 3 years, I should be the number one tight end in the league. So I think he's really looking to go into a situation where a team desperately needs him. You mentioned how great it would be to have him. I don't think San Francisco necessarily desperately needs another tight end of his caliber. Would it be nice? Absolutely. Is it necessary? I don't think so. I think you're fine. With what you have at the tight end position right now. And I just think adding another piece like that, sure, it seems nice on paper, but it's also might be a little bit harder to control when he's not getting the same amount of touches that he might have been getting playing with Baker Mayfield.
I mean, that's fair. But when I look at the tight end position behind Kittle, it is a little – I mean, you can win games with Ross Dwelley. He's a fine player. But if you're telling me Ross Dwelley steps in for Kittle versus David Njoku steps in for Kittle, we already saw last year we lost Kittle for a couple games. He's not Superman. Things can happen. Like, people get hurt, and I would prefer to have just like as many talented pieces on our roster as possible. And I think David Njoku still got it in his sophomore season when he really kind of broke out. He had 56 receptions for 639 yards and 4 touchdowns. That's a pretty good little sample size there. That's not too bad. And I feel as though, like, the way Jimmy targets the middle of the field, players like that always have a role in the offense, always have an ability to it. And Kyle Shanahan loves those yards after catch kind of guys. I feel with such a great athlete that Njoku is, he could be part of that. He could be part of what Kyle Shanahan loves to do. I mean, even further on our tight end depth chart, we got like the rookie Cole McKivitz. We don't know what we're getting there. I mean, I'd like him to be a successful player. Obviously, he's going to come cheap. I don't know, like, in terms of contract details, what we would have to deal with. Obviously, the unique thing, at least for this year, David Njoku would demand a higher salary than Kittle just based off the fact they're rookie deals, him drafted in the first round versus Kittle drafted in the fifth. I don't know if that would give Kittle any kind of complex. He doesn't seem like an ego guy either way. And positive news, we did get a report this week that Kittle's looking at potentially a $13 million settlement, which is miles apart from that $20 million, which I am more than happy about, and I would jump on in a heartbeat if they can make that happen. But I just feel as though, like, the draft capital wouldn't be too extreme. The playing ability is way better than what we have currently at the position behind Kittle. And if he wants to improve his situation, you mentioned Freddie Kitchens. Like, so we talked about Kyle Shanahan as a top 5 head coach, right? Potentially. Freddie Kitchens, like the old Moneyball thing, like, there's great head coaches, there's good head coaches, there's bad head coaches, then there's 50 piles of shit, and then there's where Freddie Kitchens is. That's essentially what this guy's had to deal with. And he still managed to make it work at least a sophomore year-ish. I just think that it's just fun to add pieces to the mind of Kyle Shanahan, and that's why I encourage them to do it.
No, you're absolutely right. Adding, a guy like that to, the Kyle Shanahan offense, it would be pretty fun to see. I'll give you that. It is very, very fun to see. But you did mention some of the maybe draft capital that we would have to give away. And what else would we have to give away to Cleveland? I'm not too sure how stingy they're being. I'm not too sure what exactly they're asking for. Maybe they think really highly of Njoku, and they're just asking for a little bit more than we can handle. I mean, we already gave a little bit to get Trent Williams from Washington. So that's another reason why I think we could maybe stay away from this one. And we've also talked about the potential of getting a guy like Jamal Adams. And so I think, is it more importantly for them to, stock up some of these draft picks and stock up some of these trade pieces out to the Jets and make sure to have those available just in case the trade like that can happen, which would be obviously a little bit more impactful than for this one. But at the same time, maybe this one's a little bit more realistic. Maybe it's more realistic for us to get David Njoku instead of a guy like Jamal Adams because you mentioned it. Maybe it might not be that much. But for me, it's still going to be something. It's still going to be something that we have to give away. I'm not too entirely sure if he's even going to work out with the Kyle Shanahan offense. That offense isn't built for everyone, but it would be interesting. I will give you that. It would be interesting to add another element, especially at that tight end position. We drafted the tight end position in this past draft. So I think that is something that they're looking forward. They're looking for that another piece at the tight end position, especially that you mentioned it. The past season, George Kittle did miss a couple games. That could happen again next year and the years coming for how many years they sign him for this extension that he's going to have. So it is a smart idea to look at the tight end position, but I'm just worried about, how much are we going to give for a guy that we don't know if he's going to stick around or not? We just don't know what he really is thinking. So maybe if they could really sit him down, if they do end up getting this deal done and saying it's like, hey, you're not going to be, the primary guy at tight end. That's pretty obvious, but you could really contribute to this team. You could really add a second element and another target for Jimmy Garoppolo. You mentioned it, and Njoku's a really athletic guy. He could really get open, especially in the middle of that field. So I think it's going to be really, really important to see where his head is at, where David Njoku is really looking to be. Who is he trying to be, especially if we do end up giving up something for him, which we would have to if we wanted to get him to San Francisco. That's the biggest key right there. What is he looking for? Is he looking to be the number one guy? Because that's not going to happen in San Francisco. Or is he really just trying to leave that dumpster fire? Or if he's just really trying to get a new start, maybe a place where he could restart his career and really show his, first round pick potential.
All right, Niners faithful, what do you think? Do you think that the Niners should jump on this David Njoku trade? Are you more in my camp? Are you more in Jose's camp? Let us know in the comments. Give us a like. Give us a subscription. We'll see you on the next episode. Other than that, guys, you stay safe, happy, and healthy.